Jezebel. What is a Jezebel? Some would say a woman with loose morals, shady, manipulative, selfish, scheming, shameless, evil. But what really is a Jezebel? Some would even go as far as saying it's a spirit, an evil ancient spirit whose story of deception and cruel manipulation was long told through the pages of the Bible. If the Jezebel spirit is truly real, then it seems it may have entered into the body of a woman who embodied every characteristic of this entity. If this spirit is real, then it helped make one of the most famous divas of all time. Diana Ross puts the D in diva. When people think of a diva, her image of arms flamboyantly outstretched in long, glittery gowns, colorful furs, and big hair is often the image that pops into people's minds. She is usually the inspiration for your favorite diva's favorite diva. She opened a lot of doors for the upcoming Black female stars who would come after her rise and dominance to fame, and allowed us to see that Black women could succeed in the entertainment industry, something that usually only white women in her field were praised for. But at what cost did Diana pay to get there? What did she sell to get in the top spot, if anything? To many who knew her, they would say she sold a lot. Whether it was the selling of her morals with the backstabbing of her friendships to the literal selling of her body to advance her career. And some sources would even say her shamelessness and supposed Jezebel spirit led to depravity with alleged inappropriate relationships, but more on that a little later. But for now, let's sit back and see just how Diana the Boss Ross became the most beloved diva ever. Diana Ernestine Earl Ross was born March 26, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan. The second oldest daughter of Fred and Ernestine Ross, the couple originally named their baby girl Diane, but the hospital made a mistake and documented it as Diana on her birth certificate. They still chose to call her Diane when she was growing up, and still do to this day, and they probably had no clue just how famous her name would be. The Ross family grew up in the north end of Detroit, and it is there where she met a little boy who'd one day help to change her life. That little boy was future legendary superstar Smokey Robinson. He was her neighbor, and they became great childhood friends. Unfortunately, Diana's mother, Ernestine, became extremely ill with tuberculosis and was on the brink of death. Because Fred thought she was going to die, he took the children and they moved down to Alabama to be with his mother, leaving Ernestine behind. Thankfully, Ernestine made a full recovery and beat her illness, and this is when her family moved back to Detroit. They'd moved to the poverty-ridden Brewster Douglas housing projects. At age 14, Diana went to a magnet school where she took fashion and design classes and learned how to sew and create her own clothes. She took these classes to prepare her for the fashion modeling world. Diana already knew she wanted to be a star then, but she wanted to be a model. But it seems an even greater direction would come for her instead. Even at a young age, Diana had ambition. At 14, while she was in school, she began working at the Hudson's department store. This was significant for that time period because she was the first Black person to ever work in Hudson that wasn't just subjected to working as a domestic in the kitchen. She was the only Black that worked out in the open for a long time. Also at this time, she met and became friends with fellow students, Florence Ballard, Mary Wilson, and Betty McGlown. Also at this time is when the girls became a singing group by the name of the Primates. They were the sister group to the male singing group, the Primes. The Primes had fellow future superstars Eddie Kendrick and Paul Williams, who would later go on to be a part of the legendary group, the Temptations. While Diana was in the Primettes, she and Eddie began dating off and on. They were just kids and were all really trying to get their singing careers off the ground. It's also been said that this is the first time that Diana used her body to get what she wanted. The primes and primettes found local success performing different gigs at sock hops and venues. And it was during one of those gigs where Diana saw her old friend, Smokey Robinson. That was a great thing because Smokey was signed to the record company Motown Records, and she wanted to get her group an audition. It's been said that this is when she made her previous friendship with Smokey suddenly an intimate one. Problem with this situation is that Smokey was a very married man. In 2023, Smokey confessed to his affair with Diana. Here's what he said about their salacious union. "I was married at the time. Ross and I were working together, and it just happened. She's a beautiful lady, and I love her right till today. She's one of my closest people. She was young and trying to get her career together. I was trying to help her. I brought her to Motown, in fact. I wasn't going after her, and she wasn't going after me. It just happened." Regardless of whether or not, it just happened. Their affair lasted about a year and got Diana and her friends in front of the boss himself, Mr. Berry Gordy. During their audition is where 16-year-old Diana tried to use her feminine wows to woo and flirt with the boss. According to eyewitnesses at the first Primettes audition at Motown, just before the group was leaving, Diana pulled her skirt up, wiggled her butt, and turned around to wink at Berry. She began flirting with him from the very start. Berry liked the girls a lot, but felt they were too young, and told them to come back when they were older, and the girls did just that after they graduated high school in 1962. At first, Florence Ballard was the lead singer because she had ultimately started this group, and their fellow member Betty left the group to focus on raising a family, leaving just Diana, Mary, and Florence to continue as a trio. But after getting signed in 1963, Berry Gordy took them from the Primettes to the Supremes, and everything changed, for the best and the worst. Berry suddenly didn't see it for Florence as the lead singer. He saw it for Diana. He felt Diana had a strange, unique look and sound that would draw people in. He felt Florence's voice was too strong for the pop songs he wanted them to sing, and that she was too curvy for the white audiences he wanted them to appeal to. He felt Diana's nasally, high, thin voice was perfect for the songs, and that her big eyes, gigantic smile, and thin body would intrigue mainstream audiences. So he made Diana the lead singer, and placed Florence in the back of her own group that she created. Then Diana started to get all the songs that were for Florence basically to herself. One of the rumors about why this happened is because Diana had begun an affair with Motown songwriter Brian Holland. Brian was important because he was a part of the famous writing trio Holland, Dozier, Holland, and they were known for writing major hits for their artists. At first, the Supremes were being referred to as the no-hits Supremes because every song they were putting out was basically flopping. But after Diana and Brian's affair started, the Supremes started their first string of hits, starting with "Where Did Our Love Go?" The messed up thing about this is that Brian was also married at the time. Young Diana Ross had no issues with taking and using taken men, and she obviously had them under her spell because she was getting great things out of them. Brian was deep in with her, so much so that whenever he was with his wife, he was constantly thinking and fantasizing about Diana. He daydreamed about her so much that beautiful lyrics about their moments together began to develop in his mind. The birth of those fantasies was the song Baby Love, the Supremes' second #1 hit. And while her affair with Brian was getting her and her group success, it was getting out of hand. The wife was now suspecting that something wasn't right with her husband, and she was going to find out. One night, Brian was getting ready for a night out on the town to a club called 20 Grand, and his wife questioned him about his plans. He told her he was just going out with his guys and to have a good time with them. Thinking it was just a guy's night out, she allowed him to continue to get ready to leave. But remembering how weird and distant he'd been with her lately, she felt he wasn't being truthful. After he'd left and been gone for a good while, she got up and went driving around looking for him. She went to the club that he said he'd be, and when she got there, she saw he was there, but he was with more than just his boys. Also in his company was Diana, wrapped up in his arms. She'd busted him and approached them. According to fellow singer Betty Lovett, she said Brian's wife cussed him out in the middle of the club, and Diana, who was always bold, tried to say something to her and rightfully got beat the hell up. The beating was so bad that Mary and Florence, who was also there, had to break it up and stand in front of Diana to keep her from continuing to get her butt kicked. It was always a wonder that Diana didn't get handled way more often with her devious ways. She'd done so many people wrong on her way to the top and used her relationship with Berry Gordy to do so. She'd even do things like steal fellow Motown girl group, Martha and the Vandellas, dresses to make them look foolish on stage. Or the time she had Barry send Gladys Knight and the Pips home while they were all on tour because they were doing so well. Or she'd get special privileges over her group mates who used to be her friends, but none of that mattered. It was like anyone who had any kind of shine, she wanted to dim it so that she could be the only shining star. This behavior from her would only get worse as she began to really hone in on the main target, Barry. While 1964 continued to see the great success and rise of the Supremes, 1965 is when things for them would change forever. It would be great for Diana, and bad for her group mates and others in Motown. The reason for this? It's been said that this is when Diana officially started sleeping with Barry, and her affair with him brought her greater perks. The problem, once again, is that Barry, like her previous lovers, was married. He was married to Raynoma Gordy. Raynoma saw the obvious flirting between the two when they were still together, but of course Barry would assure her nothing happened. Of course it was a lie, so Barry and Raynoma got divorced. But she was still around. Barry even had her chauffeuring Diana and her group around, and Diana even requested that Raynoma refer to her as Miss Ross, even though she was younger than her. As a matter of fact, Diana started to make everyone call her Miss Ross. It made her look like the huge star that Barry was turning her into. She started to make great diva demands too. Things like, whenever she'd step into a room, everyone's eyes had to be diverted away from her. You couldn't look at her. Very, very diva behavior, and Barry had no problem accommodating her. But what he did have a problem with is that Diana was still having other lovers on the side. While she was dealing with him, she was also still dealing with Brian Holland and Eddie Kendricks. And Barry really hated Eddie because Diana's relationship with him wasn't business. It was because she was really actually in love with Eddie. But Eddie never really reciprocated that deep love for her back. He even married another woman, in which Diana went to the couple's home and threw a brick through their window after being jilted. As jealous as Diana's love for Eddie made Barry, that didn't stop him from falling deep in love with her and being wrapped around her finger. Enough that he changed her group name from the Supremes to Diana Ross and the Supremes in 1967. And then finally, she went solo in 1970, becoming a huge success. And then the ultimate life changer happened to them when in 1971, Diana became pregnant with Barry's child. Being the big superstar she was now, she had an image to maintain, and she couldn't be pregnant out of wedlock because it would look bad for her image. She wanted Barry to marry her, but for the first time, Barry put his foot down and said no to her. Barry felt if they got married that it wouldn't be good for business. People would actually see that he did give preferential treatment and favoritism to Diana against everyone else, and it could possibly ruin their reputations or even lawsuits. Because she was so angry that he not only refused to marry her, but refused to claim their child together, Diana quickly married Bob Silverstein when she was 2 or 3 months pregnant. Diana gave birth to a baby girl named Rhonda, and Bob agreed to adopt Rhonda as his own. And to hide the fact that baby Rhonda didn't look biracial, Diana and Bob took family pictures in black and white so the people wouldn't get suspicious. But Diana and Bob's relationship would spawn 2 more daughters, Tracy Ellis Ross and Chudney, born later on. And even though Diana and Barry weren't together romantically anymore, she still managed to have him wrapped around her finger. It could be because he was still in love with her, or to maybe make up for not claiming their child together, but she was still his focus. He still was on a mission to make her an even bigger star. He felt she'd already conquered the music industry. Now he wanted to make her a big movie star, and he did just that. They both achieved that goal when Diana Ross starred as Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. It was a huge hit for her and showed how really talented she was as an actress. That was followed by their second hit movie Mahogany in 1975. So now that Diana Ross had fulfilled her childhood dream of stardom, she used not only her talent, her charm, charisma, drive, but body to get it. She was the epitome of using what you got to get what you want. But what if I told you her Jezebel-like charms may have turned deviant? What I am about to tell you is some disturbing information, gossip really, about Diana and Michael Jackson's relationship. I'm not talking about their confirmed romantic relationship they had when he was 20 years old. No, I'm talking about back in 1969 when Michael Jackson was only 9 years old, and things that supposedly became serious when he was 12. There are 2 women that supposedly knew and had personal relationships with Michael. One by the name of Belinda London A. Williams, and the other by the name of Genevieve Waller. Both of these women have claimed to be close friends and even intimate with Michael, and know all about his personal life as well as his disturbing history with Diana Ross. Belinda London is a former sex worker and prawn star who was introduced to Michael in the last years of his life. According to her, he eventually became her client, turned friend to friends with benefits relationship. Through her time with Michael, she says that his relationship with Diana basically broke him down to the core and ruined his future love life. He was never able to get over her and have a functioning romantic relationship with a woman after her. Belinda says that basically, Michael could date, or even be with a woman sexually, but she could never have his heart. Women, although he respected them, were disposable to him. He knew he could have any woman he wanted, and what didn't work out with one, he'd just go get another. But the main one he wanted was Diana. He loved her immensely all the way until he died. His love for Diana was so otherworldly and strong to the point of obsession. After all, Michael had made a shrine to Diana. And after many of his plastic surgeries, those close to him said it was so he'd look more like her. But one may wonder, why is that? Why was Michael so obsessively in love with her? Well, if you believe these 2 women, it's because supposedly Diana had, because I have to be careful with words on here, I'll say she primed Michael for herself. A word that rhymes with broom, in case you didn't get it. Back in 1969, when the Jackson 5 first hit the scene, they moved into Diana Ross's house until they were able to finally find a home of their own. Michael's mother, Catherine, was still back in Gary, Indiana, and away from her sons, so Diana played a mother figure for Michael and Marlon. Now, Michael always had a crush on Diana, as schoolboys do, but according to Belinda and Genevieve, Diana may have allowed her Jezebel spirit to take over. According to what Belinda says, Diana supposedly paid way more attention to Michael, way more than was needed. She'd often be alone with him more than the others. She'd take him different places with her, just them 2. Allegedly, she would allow Michael to go through her underwear drawer and talk to him about inappropriate subjects that would raise eyebrows if anyone heard. Knowing about Michael's crush on her, allegedly she'd say things like, "One day we're going to be together." A lot of inappropriate seducing. According to Belinda, this type of relationship affected Michael's love life in weird ways. as in he was into a special kind of role-playing. He liked to be the innocent one who was seduced by an aggressive older woman. He never wanted to be the aggressor or the one in pursuit. He always had to be the innocent one. Then sometimes he'd have his lovers dress up and act like Diana Ross while they were intimate. He even once said that on 2 occasions, he couldn't have an O with his lovers unless he fantasized about being with Diana. This also made Michael very distrustful of women. Belinda says that Michael felt he always had to give something up in return for the affections of a woman, whether it was money, diamonds, or especially physical intimacy. He said early on he was taught by this person the phrase, "I did you, now you do me." And he was very distrustful of women saying, "I'm your friend," or "I love you." These phrases triggered great distrust in him because of how they were used by this person, allegedly. But why was he like this about Diana, even well into his adulthood? Well, if we believe Genevieve, it's because Diana made her moves starting in 1971, when Michael would have been... Well, look at the screen. Genevieve said that Michael told her he didn't like the things that Diana had him do, but he thought he loved her. Belinda says he told her she made me love her. Both women say that Michael officially became a quote-unquote man with her when he was, look at the screen, and it was something that he took seriously because it was sacred. Also because he was a staunch Jehovah's Witness at the time, he had great guilt from it as well. He knew he was sinning by doing this. Michael even supposedly felt incredible guilt because he was allegedly dealing with her at the same time she was still Barry's mistress. Michael felt like he was betraying his mentor and father figure. He also felt like he could jeopardize his and the Jackson 5's career by messing with his woman. But still, Michael was deeply in love with her and wanted her to be his wife. Supposedly, Diana promised Michael that their relationship would not have to be a hidden secret anymore when he became a man. She couldn't afford to have the public looking down on her about their pairing. Michael held out hope for her. He believed her bedroom promises of one day truly being together and unashamed. In 1977, Diana and Michael reconnected for the filming of their movie, The Wiz. Diana did more shady things to even be a part of the film. The role of Dorothy was originally for the much younger singer, Stephanie Mills, who was dating Michael at the time. But Diana did what she always did. She used her pull as the bigger star, as well as her relationship with Barry, to fire Stephanie, and she took the starring role as Dorothy. This would allow her the chance to reconnect with Michael, who'd gotten the role of the Scarecrow. During filming, their relationship got even deeper than before. They pretty much rekindled where they left off when he was younger. One day when the crew was looking for Diana and Michael to start filming, no one could find them or get in touch with them. The couple had spent the night together in Michael's apartment, and they were late for the shoot. When they finally arrived, Diana and her assistant had a conversation. During this conversation, Diana slyly revealed to her that she and Michael were intimate by saying, "I know one thing, Michael ain't gay." Then when the assistant asked Michael if he slept with Diana, he shyly said, "You'd have to ask her that." Diana had Michael, like her other lovers, wrapped around her fingers. He was head over heels in love with her. He wrote in his biography that she was his mother, lover, and sister, all wrapped up in one good person. That statement says a lot. Michael had proposed marriage to her several times, and she declined because she felt he was too young, and the public felt the same way. They called her a cradle robber and other derogatory names for the fact that she was dating such a young man. Her reputation was getting hit hard for dealing with him, and she didn't like it, so she'd play him and messed with his emotions often. She did a lot of pushing and pulling with him. She'd dump him, but she'd get jealous whenever he tried to move on to other relationships. If he was with another girl, she'd do things like call and tell him to get rid of her so that they could be together. Then she'd play him by not showing up. Or she'd start arguments with him and make him the wrong one all the time. She always played mind games with him and didn't really take him seriously outside of the bedroom, but he still had a hard time letting her go. The last time he proposed to her, she accepted, and they told Michael's mother to see how she'd feel about their union, and Catherine was not pleased. She did not like Diana with her son and felt like she was too old and using him, so once again, Diana broke off their engagement and did something even grimier. She married another man. She married Arnonius Jr. in 1986, and this completely broke Michael's heart. After all the mind games she'd played on him and broken promises, Michael wrote a couple of songs about her, one being the famous #1 hit, Dirty Diana. If you listen to the lyrics of that song, that describes her to a T. Remember the Time and Who Is It are supposedly about Diana as well. Michael said it took him a very long time to get over Diana, and many say he never really did. Belinda says that Michael never wanted to have children with another woman. It had to be Diana or no one at all. He didn't get a vasectomy because he was holding out hope that she would one day give him children. He even put her in his will and wanted her to be the caretaker of his children if he happened to pass before her. As we can see, Diana did not take him up on that offer. It's a shame Michael allowed one woman to destroy his future relationships with others, but the Jezebel spirit can be a strong one, and it doesn't care who it affects. During the early 80s, and even after all the success she achieved in her career, Diana was still backstabbing her friends. At one point, Diana and Cher had become very close friends. Some would even say best friends. During this time, Cher was dating rock star Gene Simmons from the rock group Kiss, and they were pretty serious, but things like that never really seemed to matter to Diana. If she saw it and wanted it, then she got it. Pretty soon, paparazzi photos showed that Diana and Gene were now an item, and it didn't seem like a quick fling either. They were pretty serious as a couple. It was even to the point where Gene hated Michael Jackson because of his relationship with Diana and vice versa. Diana was still breaking hearts left and right, but her ex-sister-in-law humbled her quickly because, like how Diana snatched Gene away from her friend Cher, her ex-sister-in-law snatched Gene away from Diana. But that didn't keep Diana down too long. She had someone to fall back on, Michael. Diana's Jezebel-like traits didn't stop her from hurting anyone. That included the mistreatment and her jealousy of other popular female entertainers. But if we remember the biblical story of Jezebel, then we have to remember that Jezebel was eventually humbled greatly. In the Bible, Jezebel's karma for her evil, manipulative ways was her being thrown from a high story window and ravished by wild dogs below. While Diana Ross is still very much alive and doing seemingly well, there was a time when instances of karma came to her. In 1978, after the release of the movie The Wiz, that movie flopped and had major backlash against Diana. The role that she stole from Stephanie Mills was for a 14-year-old girl, or at least 14-year-old presenting. And Diana, who was 33 at the time, bulldozed her way into the film and was met with heckles from the audience. They were saying how old she looked and laughed at her for trying to pass off as youthful. The movie flopped so badly, and she was so embarrassed that Diana didn't act in another film until 14 years later in 1994. Then in 1999, she got in trouble for assaulting a female security guard at the London Heathrow airport. She accused the female security of inappropriately groping her during a body search, and Diana responded by grabbing the guard's breast and saying, "Now how do you like it?" Diana was pulled from the plane and arrested. To make matters worse, in 2000, Diana's husband Arne was cheating on her, and he got his mistress pregnant. This made the press and ultimately humiliated Diana. The couple got a divorce. That same year, she wanted to do a Supremes reunion tour with the original members. Diana was reportedly going to get anywhere between $15 to $20 million for the 29-day tour, and her group members, Mary Wilson and Cindy Birdsong, were only going to get $1 million. Mary felt like because she was an original member that $1 million was too low. She felt disrespected and declined the offer. They then offered her $2 million. She declined. Diana offered $2 million of her own money, which would give Mary $4 million, and Mary still declined. She just felt she was owed as much as Diana because she was an original member. So they stopped pursuing Mary and Cindy, and Diana carried the tour without her original members. Problem is, she still marketed the tour as a Supremes reunion, so audiences were expecting just that. When it was showtime, they saw that it was just Diana and 2 imposters, and the audiences were pissed. They didn't want to just see Diana, and they felt bamboozled that the originals were replaced. This created great backlash once again. Diana's reputation for being a cold-hearted, self-centered diva came back in the press, and people weren't feeling her. She was having a hard time selling out the shows, no one was really buying tickets, and she was even booed on stage. She was humiliated. Then after this time, Diana started to publicly unravel. She got really heavy into drinking, and in 2002, she was arrested for driving while under the influence. She spent only 1 day in jail, but her public reputation was only getting worse. In 2004, her ex-husband Arnie died from a rock climbing accident. Although they weren't married anymore, he was still the father of her 2 sons, and she still had love for him. She was really down about his passing. Nowadays, Diana is still touring, but for the most part she stays out of the public eye. She lives a very quiet life. Whether we think Diana was wrong with the way that she rose to fame and how she treated people along the way, one thing we can't take away from her is that her Jezebel spirit gave her an incredible life, and she used what she had to get what she wanted, good or bad. So lurkers, what do you think? Do you think Diana Ross was a Jezebel? Do you think the rumors about her and Michael Jackson are true? Let me know down below.